Welcome to today's convening of the Creative Consultants. I'm Matt, Chief Content Consultant.
And I'm Trudi, Chief Communication Consultant.
And as is custom, as is the case every time we have an episode.
Every time, all the time.
Every single time.
Every time.
Definitely on the first and subsequent ones we've done this.
Yep.
We like to open with an inspirational quote.
I cannot wait.
Set the vibe, bit of a tone for the conversation. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
All right.
I need some inspiration. Hit me.
It's not the number of breaths we take, but the number of moments that take our breath away.
Oh, Matt. I'm going to need a minute.
That's another moment where your breath has been taken away.
It has. I'm going to need just a moment to get myself together after that.
How do you feel? How does that make you? How does that sit?
It really does. It really aligns tightly with the wisdom that we're going to share in today's podcast episode.
It's a perfect segue into today's conversation on today's agenda.
Let's do it.
We offer the following. How does one afford creativity?
What a great question.
I know, it's like we've planned it.
I know. It's almost like we've designed a podcast episode.
It's like we've kind of gone, what's the topic to discuss?
Yeah.
Let's intro the topic and now open the floor for healthy debate.
Absolutely. Well, I guess we should talk about why this topic.
Yeah. And it's not just an
we...
excuse to dress like an 80s gangster that sells, bootleg DVDs out of the boot of his car at a petrol station.
We were talking before about the menthol cigarettes that I'm sure you've got hidden in there.
Correct.
It was The Greed is Good.
That's right.
What was that? Well, we talked about that. What movie?
Wall Street.
Greed is Good.
Gordon
Gekko and Gordina, I think we kind of at.
Yeah.
I think we talked about like creativity around affording creativity around everybody talks about it and wants it in their organisation, but how do you sell it up? How do you get it in? How do you afford it? How do you put it in your budget?
Yeah.
Realistically.
And it's such a scary proposition. I think people see the word creativity or hear it and it's like the little squirrels come out and they're like, well, this is going to cost a lot of money. Like the creatives come out.
Yeah.
It's expensive, but it doesn't have to be. So I guess like maybe for context, like what's your role when you go into an organization and how does somebody engage with you? Because I think so often it's we like the idea of this, but we just don't know where to start.
And I think also too, I think creativity, the word makes people clench, right? And feel awkward, like they're going to be suddenly made to be trees.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I say in all of my work. Nobody will be being a tree today. And I think that's what happens. I go in and I say to people that I am actually a process specialist. Yeah. So I take the problems of your organisation and I create a playful process in order to sell them, or to sell them, I should say, to train, to learn, to whatever.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's what creativity does. It becomes like a base, like a capsule that helps organisations and teams grow, innovate, improve, be more productive, but almost sneakily and cleverly. And it has to work around what they're doing, right? It's all very well to go in there and be like, wow, now I've had this session and I can, paint a wine glass. But actually, how does that correlate to what you're doing?
Well, yeah, you're not, to use the word selling or not like providing creativity. It's actually the outcome that as a vessel for learning, developing, whatever is providing, right? It's similar to us. Like we are content. We make videos and photos and content, right? Yeah. Which is a much more tangible object out of something like that. But the process of being creative and making that thing in a creative way oftentimes just elevates the messaging that's inside that piece of content. And it's not like we're not selling creative video, we're selling the outcome of what that video achieves. So I guess what's probably the first thing that you would want to engage with or sort of start understanding with an organization or somebody you started working with to go, well, here's how I can work with you to develop that?
Well, I think we would have similar veins there in the sense of an organization will come and say, I've got this problem.
Yeah.
Right. I would imagine it's very similar with you. If I'm a business, I come to you and I say, we need to tell this message or we have this problem that we need solved.
Yeah.
Similar thing. Someone will come and say, we have this problem that we need solved. And then it's really about guiding them through the process so that they get the outcome and whatever that problem is solved, but in a really clever, joyful, creative, fun, playful way.
Yeah.
And really look at your choices. If you're going to go from A to B, and you're going to do it through death by PowerPoint or through something fun and playful, it seems like a no-brainer.
Totally. Yeah. Similar for us. Like it's the same thing where, we're ultimately communication tool. It's how do you get a message across? How do you engage an audience? How do you, impart wisdom, knowledge, experience, whatever it is. But you can take somebody A to B and make it really simple, or you can come at it with a creative angle and go, well, how do you present this information in a unique way, understand the context at which an audience or somebody's going to engage with that, and go, well, how do you play within that to sort of create an environment that messaging is elevated because of it. I often think, like, you know, creativity doesn't have to be the big bells and whistles Hollywood production. It can be as simple as thinking about, like, all right, well, we've got a story that goes from A to B naturally, sort of using your same example. But what happens if we tell the story, we start at B and then we go to C and D and then come back to A, and all of a sudden that structure just changes the way somebody's presented with that information. It illuminates parts of it that you might not see as relevant or interesting. That's the creative process you go through to make something much more engageable.
Yes.
Is that a word?
Engageable. Yes.
Sure.
It
Why
is
not?
now.
Yeah, it is
This is
now.
our business. We can do what we want.
Yes, we're creative consultants.
We are creative consultants.
Second point on the agenda. Figure out what engageable is.
Right to dictionary. Engageable.
Done.
Yeah,
Done. But, you know, like, it's coming at that information in a way that, you know, changes the way somebody thinks about it. And you want to create these new pathways and new ways of thinking, so you're not just stuck in the same way of doing things. There's innovation and there's excitement around, you know, where a business is going. And
I would imagine that if I rang some of your clients, you would have inadvertently taught them about the creative process through working with you.
Let's test it, right?
Can we?
I'd say you're probably right.
I'm sure you're very engageable as you go along, right?
Good. This is good.
Good. Yeah. So I think that's the other thing too. I think people talk about, well, how do I, you know, talk about getting a consultant in or getting a video production company in or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The runoff of that as well is that creativity is contagious. Creativity is a flow on, and people at the top are learning, all the people that are involved in whatever process this is that you go in and do with people, the runoff effect. We were talking before about cheesecake. This is a different metaphor. It's like, what is it? It's like the
champagne tower thing where the flow off.
It's like the champagne tower thing with the flow off effect, where the top stuff gets it, but so do all of the other. Mysteriously, all of the other stuff gets it as well.
Yeah.
And I think people are reluctant to pay for champagne going into one glass at the top, but what they're not seeing is the fact that it ripples down and all of a sudden 60 glasses are miraculously filled.
Yeah. We're both parents. We talk about our kids quite a lot, right? And it's the same thing where, like, as a parent, it becomes really obvious that your children need you to play with them and be involved in that level of play. And so often that, like, the hesitancy or the resistance for them doing something a bit more creative comes from the fact that you're not engaging with them on that level. But if you can sort of, you know, lead by example and say, hey, I'm going to get down on the floor with you. I'm going to run around, like, pretend to be a pirate and whatever. And they join in. Just the amount of opportunity that opens up and inspiration and just imagination that comes to the fore because of that is, like, it's that overwhelming flow on effect, right?
Yes.
It's exactly like the champagne fountain. That's like the simple idea of just putting in a little bit of play at the top, seeing how it trickles down and involves everybody else as part of that process is so critical. And I don't think people recognize it. They see it as, you know, the line item on an invoice, or, oh no, creativity, we don't need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you think about what your child surprisingly teaches you, I love that. Right? The things that I have learnt through my son are quite phenomenal, like bananas are radioactive, or mucormycosis, like just weird stuff that I would never ever experience or learn without playing with him.
Yeah.
And I think when, once again, you look at this leadership trends about getting involved in co-designing and being part of leading from behind, it's the best way as well to almost promote innovation out of your company, is to actually get in there, play with your staff, play with your organisations, have that trickle-down effect. If it goes back to the question that we had originally, how could why can you afford? What was that question?
How can one afford creativity?
How can one afford creativity?
Well, I think the real question is, you can't afford not to use creativity, right?
How can one not afford it?
Yeah. It's super clear.
But really, if you think about it, that's the sneaky bit.
Yeah.
Right? People look at the top champagne glass and they don't really pay attention to the 60 underneath.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we one major use of our skill set is conference videos, right? And particularly like an opening video for a conference. Now you think about, like, the context at which somebody arrives to that as, like, a staff member that's brought along to this thing. They're brought to an environment where there's, like, an expectation of learning, of being told what's going on and future, plans and all that sort of stuff. The opening video as a piece of content is designed to create the vibe that resonates through the rest of the event. Now, you could argue that you should be very like, here's what's going to happen and blah, blah, and very straight-laced down the line. Or, as we've done so many times in the past, embraced a whole bunch of creativity, knowing the context of the people in that audience, going, they're here for this thing and they want buy-in. They want to be, heard and seen and understood. There's an understanding that there's assumed knowledge in that room of whatever it is their business is going through or whatever. And if you put some sort of creative idea on top of that and really just draw these interesting parallels or juxtapositions between those two things, that audience is going to feel like they're the smartest people in the room.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden they've gone, oh, I get this. I get all of this. And what an amazing way of elevating it. And so all of a sudden a silly parody is like the greatest vibe tone setter for a 2-day thing that just builds so much momentum and excitement with the people engaging with it. Sure, the same thing goes with you, right? You're not creating like, painting wine glasses or playing Simon Says just because it's a fun game. It's like it creates tangible momentum in what you're actually looking to achieve, right?
Yeah, it does. It creates tangible momentum, and what happens is when people are so focused on the activity of play, that's when the deep learning occurs.
Yeah.
Because interestingly, often people will come to me and say, we have this problem and we would like you to solve it through play. But quite often what happens is the deeper problem pops up during the playful activity because people feel safe, comfortable, included. They feel like they have a voice and they feel in a safe space. What happens is out pops these amazing revelations and elements of the company that people hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
So quite often there's this moment where this like light bulbs go off everywhere and everyone's like, oh, like some kind of magic voodoo thing that happens. Because you're right. I was listening to you talk about that opening video of a conference. It is this creativity is inclusive as well, right?
Yeah.
And quite often we all know it as kids. Being told something is never as effective as being included in something. And it seems like a really easy equation, I think.
I think it's obviously related, but storytelling is the sort of natural extension of that, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day in the L&D space, and he was like, how does learning and development embrace storytelling? Because it's like, you're following standard operating procedures and all of these like really rigid, like here's how we do things or expectations. But how do you bring in something that feels so intangible like storytelling? And I was like, well, that's the vessel for the message, right? Yes. And I to bring it back to kids, one of the books that I read to my boys all the time is Little Bont's Big Secret, which Marcus Bontempelli from the Western Bulldogs, I love you so much. Please follow along with the podcast. But basically this book is about Marcus as a kid. He loves playing footy and he goes to his Nana's house and he kicks the ball and breaks one of Nana's garden gnomes. And then in a panic, he lies about it and blames it on the cat. The cat knocked it off the thing. And the whole story is like this nice little story of a little boy kind of realizing he's feeling guilty, then learns to apologize and whatever. The message and the point of that is to be like, honesty is important, owning up to things, taking responsibility, but it's in the guise of a story. And so my boys love it for the pictures and the funny cat face and all of that sort of stuff in the book, but they're actually learning a message from it. Same thing applies in an organization or whatever, that you kind of, it sounds a bit sinister, but like Trojan horse outcomes through fun, humor, creativity, play, that all of a sudden people go, I'm more invested. I've learned something. I care more because just their in has a much more, I don't know, exciting.
I think as humans, we like to think we've had all this evolution, and we have. Like, we've got these incredible brains, and our brains blow my mind, and I'm a real neurology nerd, and I think, and it's awesome. But actually, we're really still primal creatures, and we work from a storytelling space. We work from an emotional space. We work from a human connection space. And I think we all a lot of organizations will try and move away from that, but that's really the key. I had this beautiful it was a presenting course workshop, all-day workshop with this company that did some really hardcore science data. Like, they went in and they did all this science data with all these things, and they were all numbers and statistics, and they were like, how do we present our information and our research in a more storytelling way? Yeah. So I told them this beautiful story about, this person and this search and this quest that they went on. They were all like, oh, it's such a lovely story. And I was like, actually, that's your website. All I have done is taken the statistics from your website and the story that you tell about the founding of your company, and I've turned it into something more emotional and less clinical. Yeah. And it was like, oh. And that equation is so simple. Yeah. And I just think I think organizations are starting to they're starting to get more involved in understand the power of creativity and storytelling, because they're all bedfellows. I like to say that play and creativity are like naughty bedfellows.
Ooh. Well, I mean, just talking about back to the topic of this, which is how do you afford creativity, right?
Yeah.
There's probably an element of people watching this going, cool, yeah, I get this. This all sounds great. It's lots of outcome-driven, activities or content, whatever it is. But like, there's not a direct ROI or return on investment. You don't put X amount of creativity in and get Y amount of outcome. How would you go about, and this is probably a very challenging question to pose to you right now, but
do it.
How do you put a value on that? Like, how do you have those conversations where somebody goes like, this is great and I see there's value here, but I don't understand what it looks like as an outcome. Like, how do you handle those conversations?
Well, I'm really glad that you asked me that, because I've worn the right attire to answer that.
Oh, good.
My power suit.
Wouldn't it be funny if, like, in a meeting where you're having, and you're like, hang on, I'll answer that question in just a second.
Put on my suit, my power suit.
Okay, I'm back here.
Do you know, I've always wanted to go to some kind of meeting in something really random, like pajamas.
Oh, yeah.
Or you know how kids, they wake up one day and they're like, I'm going to the shops. I need to wear my princess outfit.
Yeah.
I want to do that. I want to like rock into some kind of, I don't know, meeting in something random.
I will come back to the question that I asked you. And I don't know if you're trying to stall to buy yourself time.
I'm not, but go.
So I went to a networking meeting in shorts and Air Jordans once. And I remember somebody came up to me and was like, oh, you're here for the network? I thought you were just like a guest at this hotel. I was like, no, like, this is what I wear. And he's like, what? You realize this is a professional networking meeting? Like, yeah, and I'm the creative. Like, if I showed up in a suit and tie, you're going to be like, well, this guy's a bit of a poser. And I got no work from it. But I like to think that the impression I made was like, he's the creative guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so you lent into the creative stereotype.
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I wonder if you could have like a dress-up networking event.
Copyright, creative consultants. If this goes well, we'll have our own IRL meetup that's like dress for the role, do you know what I'd love to see? Dress as the superhero you've always wanted to be. Yeah.
Or something like random.
Yeah.
Where people meet each other in something random. Anyway, back to the question. Affordability. I think you don't measure incredible ROI. As you say, you can't tick a box. You can't go, yep, our employees have moved from here to here. But what you can do is you can see the benefits and the ripple effect that has on whole. There's now heaps of research that's being done around what creativity can do for the organisation in total. Particularly play, if we're talking play specifically, there's some really key things. We need staff to be adaptable now. We need people who at their work to be adaptable. We also know how important well-being is. Burnout is huge. And if you look at what play does, retention, that's the other thing, right? And if you can look at some of those things like, oh, we started here and now we have an organisation where we inject play into our L&D along our journey, and now we have staff that stay longer. It's something like 85% of people will stay longer if they're enjoying their work.
Yeah.
Or we're going to stay longer. We are less burnt out. We are actually enjoying what we're doing. We are connected holistically as a team. Like, that's the other thing. The ROIs aren't on paper, but you can just see them and feel them around your organisation.
Yeah. We often deal in like impact and engagement. It's those two metrics that like it's really hard to measure it on a spreadsheet and be like, oh, impact is up by 20% this quarter.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a tangible thing where like, we use the conference example, like the vibe in the room and then the rest of the engagement at that event is just so elevated because you've set the tone, you've set the benchmark, or you've set the expectation or the environment and the situation in which people can show up. And I think that like, anybody considering bringing in some level of creativity or play, there's not a direct one-to-one. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it, because it is imperfect in a lot of ways, and it's messy and in the best ways possible because it's human. And I think like that's ultimately what we want to come back to, right? Is that it's authentic and it's real and it's personable, and it allows people to be people and show up in all of the ways that can materialize.
And that's what people remember and connect to. I've had people come up to me at the end of their training sessions and say, I've never I've never understood that, or I've never thought about that, or I've never known that about my team, and I've worked with them for 25 years. I have one guy who was like, that's the first training I haven't fallen asleep in 40 years. Like that's an ROI that you can measure, and that's that tangible thing of like emails that come in months down the track saying, I'm still doing such and such, or I went home and I did that with my family as well. It's all that. They're the ripple-ons.
Yeah, totally.
That's your ROI, really.
Yeah. So look, as we kind of wrap this this convening of the creative consultants.
Convening, I love it.
What's the one biggest takeaway when we think about this as a topic? How do you afford creativity or anything that sort of encapsulates? What's the one thing that you think people should take away from this?
I think what people should take away is that there is hard evidence now about how much creativity can do holistically for your whole organisation. And when we're all time poor and we need things done quickly, it's the best way to do it. So there shouldn't be any question about affording it if you're looking long term. If you're clever enough to look holistically at your organisation, if you're a leader who's clever enough to think about what your future employees and team will need, then there should be no question.
Yeah. And I think, you hit the nail on the head with that, like that ripple down effect, right? Yeah. It's the like you start a little movement and then the feelings of that can carry on for months, years. Like it can create such an impact and a genuine moment that people can look back to and go, this is a change in thinking, a change in leadership, a change in attitude to the way we operate, that I think it's really hard to ignore. And you can't stay blinded to creativity for much longer.
And I think that's it. You can imagine a pouring along the line, or you can imagine pouring from the top.
I mean, that's pretty good.
I just sparkled myself.
How do we end this?
It's a good question.
Done.
Great.